The moment my daughter wrinkled her nose and said my car smelled like fast food, something inside me finally snapped. We were standing in the kitchen of the house I paid off 12 years ago. Morning light filtered through the blinds, stretching across the old oak table where I had just set down a paper bag, 2 sausage biscuits, and a cup of burnt diner coffee I hadn't finished during my last DoorDash run. Vanessa leaned against the counter, arms folded, looking at me like I had dragged mud across a white carpet. "Mom, seriously," she said, waving her hand in front of her face. "Your car reeks. Fries, grease, burgers. It's embarrassing. I hate when my friends have to get in there." For a second, I just stood there, holding my keys. 71 years old, up since 5 in the morning, delivering pancakes, burritos, and egg sandwiches across half the county while my grown children slept upstairs like teenagers. And she was embarrassed by the smell of fries. "Your friends," I said slowly. Vanessa rolled her eyes and reached for the refrigerator. "Yeah, normal people don't want to ride around in a car that smells like a drive-through." Upstairs, a floorboard creaked. Brian was finally awake. It was almost 11. A minute later, he shuffled down in the same gray sweatpants he'd been wearing for 3 days. His hair looked like it had lost a fight with a pillow. "Morning," he mumbled, grabbing a bowl. "Morning," Vanessa said with a laugh. "Mom's been out working since sunrise." Brian poured cereal and shrugged. She likes driving around. Likes. That word hit harder than anything else. I set my keys on the counter and slipped off my cardigan. The kitchen smelled faintly of maple syrup and cold coffee, and something sweeter, the cardamom bun I had picked up from a little bakery during a delivery. I had planned to enjoy it later. Instead, I stood there, watching my 2 adult children move through my kitchen like they owned the air in it. Brian sat scrolling on his phone, chewing loudly. Vanessa poured almond milk into a glass, glancing at me again. "You know, if you're going to keep doing that delivery thing, you should at least get the car detailed or something. It's kind of depressing." Depressing. Not hardworking, not responsible, not necessary. Depressing. I looked at the sink full of dishes neither of them had touched the night before. A pan still had dried tomato sauce stuck to the bottom. A spoon stood upright in a bowl of oatmeal that have hardened into something like plaster. The Wi-Fi bill sat under a lemon-shaped magnet. I paid that. The electric bill, too. Groceries, insurance, property taxes. Everything in this house ran through me, and somehow I was the embarrassing one. Brian glanced up. "Hey, Mom, did you grab more eggs?" I exhaled quietly. "No." Vanessa sighed. "Great, I was going to make shakshuka later." Shakshuka? In my kitchen, with eggs I would have paid for. For years, I told myself they were just getting back on their feet. Jobs fell through, rent got expensive, the economy shifted. Excuses stacked like dirty dishes. But standing there with the smell of coffee and cold hash browns clinging to my jacket, I realized something uncomfortable. They weren't struggling. They were comfortable, because I made it comfortable. Vanessa took another sip of her drink and wrinkled her nose again. "And seriously, you should do something about that car. It smells like a McDonald's parking lot." I picked up the paper bag from the table, folded it neatly, and dropped it into the trash. Neither of them noticed. Brian was watching a video, Vanessa was texting. For a long moment, I stood there listening to the quiet hum of the refrigerator. 71 years old, still working, still paying, still being treated like a nuisance in my own house. That's when the thought came. Not loud, not dramatic, just quiet. What would happen if this house stopped being theirs? Hello, my friends, it's Grace. Our heroine, Helen, is 71, still working while her adult children sleep the morning away. Hearing a daughter speak to her mother like that, it says a lot. Tell me, have you ever seen something like this in a family? If you walked through my house around noon, you might think it was some strange kind of retirement home where the young were the ones being taken care of. By 11:30, the upstairs blinds were still half closed. The hallway smelled faintly of body spray and microwave popcorn. Somewhere, a phone alarm buzzed endlessly before someone finally silenced it. Meanwhile, I had already completed 3 deliveries, 1 oat milk latte run, and dropped off bacon croissants at a law office downtown. My mornings started at 5. I kept a thermos in the car and a wool blanket behind the passenger seat for cold mornings. My Buick wasn't fancy, but it was reliable. Its seats carried the scent of 1,000 deliveries: fries, garlic knots, cinnamon rolls, once even pho that spilled into the floor mat. Vanessa said that smell embarrassed her, but that smell paid the bills. I hung my cardigan and started filling the sink. The dishes clinked as I stacked them. Brian spoke without looking down. "So, no eggs?" "No eggs." He sighed. "Guess I'll just order something." Of course he would. Vanessa chimed in from the couch. "You should try that Thai place on Maple. Their pad krapao is insane." "Yeah, but it's like $20. Then both of them looked at me. It wasn't subtle anymore. For years, I would have stepped in right there. "Don't worry, I'll cover it. I'll grab groceries later." But not today. I kept scrubbing. "Mom," Vanessa said, "did you hear me?" "I heard you." "Well, probably not going shopping." "Why not?" Brian asked. I shrugged. Didn't feel like it. That confused them more than anger ever would have. Vanessa checked the refrigerator, frowned, and shut it. "There's nothing here." That wasn't true. There was yogurt, preserves, cheese, scallions, and lentil soup I had made 2 nights before, but none of it counted to them. "You used to keep it stocked," Brian said. Used to. Funny how words hit harder out loud. I used to cook meals that took hours. I used to fill the fridge with thoughtful little dishes, back when I believed appreciation would come. "You should slow down with deliveries," Vanessa said. "Focus on the house again." The house? That had been mine since 1994. I looked around. Worn cabinets, a cracked tile, memories of birthdays and laughter, and now 2 adults treating it like a free hotel. "Actually, Mom," Brian said, "I might need to borrow the car." "My car?" "Yeah, just for a bit." Vanessa perked up. "Good idea, just air it out first." That's when something clicked. They hadn't asked how I was. Not once. Only noticed the smell. I looked out at my Buick. That car carried my independence. And another thought followed the first. If the house disappeared, they'd have nowhere to sleep until noon. "No," I said calmly, "you can't borrow the car." "Why not?" "Because I might need it." And for the first time in a long time, that was true. 2 days after the "car smells" comment, the real humiliation arrived. A Saturday afternoon. I pulled into the driveway after a delivery, Vietnamese sandwiches and pandan cake. My hands ached the way they do after decades of use. The front door was open. Inside, voices. Vanessa's, bright, performative, and another voice. I stepped inside. "I swear," Vanessa said, "my mom just refuses to slow down." I paused. A well-dressed woman sat on the couch holding a glossy folder. A realtor. "This is Melissa. She's just showing me some options." Options. Melissa smiled. "Your daughter mentioned she might be looking at places." Looking. I set my bag down slowly. Inside it, a recipe and a lemon tart someone had gifted me. Photos spread across the table. New homes, bright kitchens, marble counters. "Nice," Vanessa said. "We'd figure it out." We. That word echoed. Eventually, Vanessa glanced at me and said, "Well, we'll have the equity from this house anyway." Just like that. My life turned into their future down payment. Melissa left. The house fell silent again. Vanessa turned to me. "What?" I held the lemon tart. "Vanessa," I asked calmly, "when exactly were you planning to buy a house?" She rolled her eyes. "Relax, Mom. It's not like we're moving tomorrow." I nodded. No, not tomorrow. But suddenly, 4 days felt like a very interesting number. After Melissa left, the house returned to its usual rhythm, which is to say, none at all. I answered for both of us. It is happening. My voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Calm has a way of carrying further than anger ever could. Vanessa stared at me like she was waiting for me to crack, to smile, to admit this was some kind of strange joke. When I didn't, something in her expression shifted, not into understanding, but into resistance. "No," she said, shaking her head slowly. "No, this is ridiculous. You don't just wake up one day and decide to sell the house." I tilted my head slightly. Actually, that's exactly how most people decide. Brian let out a short, uneasy laugh. "Okay, seriously, Mom, what's going on? Did something happen? Are you in trouble or something?" That almost made me laugh. "For the first time in a long time," I said, "I'm not in trouble at all." Marlene remained quiet, standing just off to the side, her presence steady and professional. She wasn't here to argue. She was here to observe, to guide, and, if needed, to proceed. Vanessa stepped closer, lowering her voice like that might somehow change the outcome. "You should have talked to us first." I met her eyes. "Why?" She blinked. "Because we live here." There it was again, that word, we. I let a small pause settle between us before answering. "You live in a house I paid for. You use electricity I pay for. You eat food I bring into this house." I gestured lightly around the kitchen. "That's not the same thing as ownership." Brian shifted uncomfortably. "That's not fair." "No," I said quietly. "What hasn't been fair is pretending this arrangement was temporary when it stopped being temporary years ago." Silence stretched across the room again, heavier this time. Upstairs, the music was off. The house felt different already, like something invisible had shifted in its foundation. Vanessa crossed her arms tighter. "So what, you're just kicking us out?" "I didn't say that." "Then what are you saying?" I took a slow breath, choosing my words carefully. "I'm saying the house is being sold. What you choose to do after that is up to you." Brian ran his hair through his hair again, pacing a few steps like he was trying to think faster than reality was moving. "This is insane," he muttered. "Where are we supposed to go?" I didn't answer immediately, not because I didn't have one, but because this was the first time they were asking the right question. Vanessa looked at Marlene again, as if hoping for backup. "You can't seriously be encouraging this." Marlene offered a polite, measured smile. "My job is to help Mrs. Mercer with whatever decision she's made." Vanessa scoffed. "Unbelievable." "No," I said softly. "What's unbelievable is how long I convinced myself this was normal." That landed. You could see it in the way neither of them spoke right away. I picked up my coffee again, now lukewarm, and took a small sip anyway. "This isn't about punishing you. It's about changing something that stopped working a long time ago." Brian leaned against the counter again, but this time there was no casualness in it. "You're serious?" "Yes." Vanessa's voice dropped, quieter now, but sharper. "And you're just fine with this? Just throwing everything away?" I looked around the kitchen, the worn cabinets, the magnet on the fridge, the familiar light filtering through the window. "No," I said, "I'm not throwing it away." I met her eyes again. "I'm finally letting it go." Another long pause. This one felt different too, less chaotic, more real. Marlene gently cleared her throat. "Mrs. Mercer, I can have the listing prepared by tomorrow. If you're aiming for a clean and quick sale, we should move while the market is still active." I nodded. "Let's do that." Brian let out a slow breath, like the weight of what was happening was finally settling in. Vanessa didn't say anything, not this time. She just stood there, arms crossed, staring at the floor like she was trying to find the version of reality she'd been standing on 5 minutes ago. But it wasn't there anymore, and for the first time in years, neither was I. "One is," Marlene said. I didn't answer right away. I just stood there on the porch, staring out at the yard as the last light of the day settled over the maple tree. The leaves shifted softly in the breeze, like nothing in the world had changed. But everything had. "How close?" I asked quietly. "Very close," Marlene replied. "Full price, clean terms. They're motivated." I let out a slow breath, my fingers tightening slightly around the phone. "That was fast." "I told you," she said gently. 4 days is sometimes generous." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. "And the second?" "Also strong," she said. "Slightly under, but flexible. We have options." Options. That word sat differently now than it would have a week ago. Before, options felt like risks. Now they felt like something else entirely. Freedom, maybe. "I'll come by tomorrow," Marlene continued. "We can go over everything together." "All right," I said. I ended the call and stayed on the porch for a moment longer. Inside, I could hear faint movement, Vanessa pacing again, Brian's voice low, uncertain. They knew something had shifted, they just didn't know how much. When I walked back inside, both of them looked up immediately. "What did she say?" Brian asked. I hung my phone by my side. "We have 2 offers." The silence that followed was immediate and heavy. Vanessa blinked. "You're joking." "I'm not." Brian straightened slightly. "Already?" "Yes." Vanessa let out a short, disbelieving laugh, but it didn't carry the same bite as before. "No, that's not possible. It's been 1 day." I met her eyes. "Apparently it is." Brian ran a hand through his hair again, pacing once across the living room before stopping. "Are you going to accept one?" "Not tonight," I said calmly. "We'll review them tomorrow." Vanessa shook her head, backing up a step like the walls themselves had started closing in. "This is insane," she whispered. No one argued with her this time, because now it was real. Not a threat, not a dramatic moment, not something they could laugh off or dismiss. Real. Brian sat down slowly on the couch, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor. "So this is actually happening?" "Yes." Vanessa turned toward me again, her voice softer now, but sharper in a different way. "And you're just okay with it?" I thought about that for a second, about the early mornings, the deliveries, the long, quiet nights, the years of holding everything together while slowly disappearing inside it. Then I looked at her. "Yes," I said. "I am." That seemed to hit her harder than anything else. She didn't argue, didn't roll her eyes, didn't laugh. She just stood there, staring at me, like she was seeing someone she didn't recognize. Brian finally spoke again. "What happens next?" I walked into the kitchen, rinsed my cup, and set it gently in the sink. "Tomorrow we look at the offers. Then we decide." "And then?" he pressed. I turned back toward them. "And then we move forward." Vanessa crossed her arms again, but it wasn't the same defiant gesture as before. This time it looked more like she was holding herself together. "How long?" she asked quietly. "About 30 days, maybe less, depending on the terms." 30 days, she repeated under her breath. Brian exhaled slowly. "That's not a lot of time." "No, it's not." The room fell quiet again. Outside, the evening deepened. The last bit of sunlight slipped away, leaving the house in that soft, in-between glow where everything feels temporary. For the first time, neither of them argued, neither of them dismissed it, because now they understood something they hadn't before. This wasn't about a comment, or a smell, or even a house. It was about change, and change had already begun. Inside the house, Vanessa's voice drifted faintly through the kitchen window. What if someone actually buys it this week? Brian replied, but I couldn't make out the words. I smiled slightly. Send me the details, I told Marlene. When I stepped back inside, both of them looked up immediately. Vanessa spoke first. What did she say? I placed my phone on the counter. We received offers. Brian blinked. Already? Yes. Vanessa let out a nervous laugh. That doesn't mean anything. I looked straight at her, then said calmly, one of them is above asking. The color drained from her face. Brian sat down slowly. For the first time since this all began, neither of them had anything to say. Friends, imagine strangers walking through your own home, deciding whether they want to buy it. Helen stayed calm, but that kind of calm isn't easy. Tell me honestly, would you accept the offer right away or wait? That night, the house felt different. Not peaceful, just tense. Brian sat at the dining table, laptop open, staring at rental listings like someone trying to understand a language they never expected to need. Vanessa paced in small circles, phone pressed to her ear. Yes, I know, but she's actually serious. No, I'm not kidding. The house already has offers. I didn't ask who she was talking to, probably one of those friends who used to complain about the smell of fries in my car. At the counter, I sliced an apple. The knife moved slowly through the crisp flesh. The soft thud against the cutting board echoed in the quiet. Funny how ordinary sounds grow louder when everyone else stops talking. Vanessa ended the call and turned to me. You told people already? No. Well, someone knows, she snapped. Darlene just asked me why you're dumping the house. Ah, Darlene Shaw, my late husband's cousin, a woman who collected family drama like antiques. She probably saw the listing, I said. Vanessa scoffed. So now the whole family thinks you've lost your mind. Brian finally spoke. How much were the offers? I wiped my hands on a towel. One is a little over asking. Vanessa stopped pacing. And the other, quite a bit higher. Silence again. Brian leaned back slowly. That's a lot of money. Yes. Vanessa folded her arms. So what, you're just going to take it? Probably. Her voice rose. You didn't even discuss it with us. Brian shifted uncomfortably. Vanessa, she cut him off. This is ridiculous. You're making a huge decision that affects all of us. I leaned against the counter. No, I said calmly. I'm making a decision about my house. Her jaw tightened. That's a technicality. I actually laughed. A technicality? Brian rubbed his forehead. Mom, if you sell it that fast, we only have 30 days. Yes, that's not a lot of time. I took a bite of apple. No, I agree. It isn't. Vanessa stared at me, trying to force guilt into the room. Where are we supposed to go? I chewed slowly. I'm sure you'll figure something out. Brian spoke carefully. Couldn't you just wait a little longer? Why? So we can plan. You've had years to plan. That one landed. Vanessa shook her head. This is unbelievable. Brian closed his laptop halfway. What about the offers? I'm reviewing them with Marlene tomorrow. Vanessa let out a hollow laugh. So you're really doing it? Brian stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the maple tree rustled softly in the night breeze. 30 days, he said quietly. That's not much time. No, I replied. It isn't. Vanessa grabbed her phone and stormed toward the stairs. Unbelievable, she muttered again. A moment later, her bedroom door slammed upstairs. Brian stayed by the window. Silence settled between us, heavy but not hostile, just real. After a while, he spoke again, softer this time. You're serious about leaving too, aren't you? Yes. Where? I found a small place near the river. He turned slightly, surprised. Already? Yes. He nodded slowly. I guess you really thought this through. I looked around the kitchen one more time. The oak cabinets, the worn tile floor, the refrigerator with the lemon magnet holding the Wi-Fi bill in place. Yes, I said. I finally did. Brian stared out the window again before asking the question that had been hovering all evening. What happens when the house actually sells? I picked up my delivery bag and carried it toward the hallway. Well, I said calmly, that's when the clock really starts. The next morning, the house felt different. Not louder, not quieter, just unsettled. Brian was already awake when I walked into the kitchen at 7. That alone told me something had shifted. Normally, he didn't appear before 10 unless something had gone very wrong or very right. He sat at the table with coffee and his laptop open. Rental listings, applications, budget calculators. "Morning," I said. "Morning." His voice was quieter than usual. I opened the fridge and pulled out the last container of lentil soup. It had thickened overnight, the cumin and garlic deepening into something richer. Brian watched me. "Nom?" "Yes." "Did you really get offers above asking?" "Yes." "How much above?" I told him. He stared at the screen, then let out a low whistle. "That's a lot." "It is." Vanessa came downstairs 15 minutes later. She looked like she hadn't slept, hair tied in a messy knot, wearing Brian's hoodie like armor. She stopped when she saw us both already awake. "What now?" she muttered. "Coffee's fresh," Brian said. She poured a cup and sat down without another word. Brian turned his laptop slightly toward her. "Look at this one." She barely glanced. "That's tiny." "It's affordable." "For who?" "For us." That word lingered. Us. Not including me. Vanessa leaned back. "I'm not living in some depressing shoebox." Brian rubbed his forehead. "Unless you've got a better idea." She didn't answer. I heated the soup on the stove. The smell of cumin, garlic, and tomato filled the kitchen. Outside, the maple leaves brushed softly against the window. My phone buzzed. A message from Marlene. "Helen, the buyers are very serious. One wants to move quickly. Can we meet this afternoon?" I replied, "Yes." Vanessa noticed. "That her again?" "Yes." She shook her head. "You're really going through with this?" I didn't respond. Brian looked at me. "When would closing be?" "About a month." Vanessa let out a hollow laugh. "So we might literally lose the house today." I finished my soup and set the bowl down. "Yes," I said calmly. "That's when possible." Silence followed, heavier this time. Because now they understood. The house wasn't just being listed. It was already leaving. That afternoon, I met Marlene at a small office near the courthouse. It wasn't fancy. No glass walls, no espresso machines, just a narrow hallway that smelled faintly of printer ink and old carpet. I liked it. She had 3 folders ready. 3 offers. 3? A third came in this morning. I reviewed them. Numbers, timelines, conditions. Decisions made with logic, not emotion. The third is the strongest. Highest offer, fastest closing. I closed the folder and folded my hands. "What would you do?" "If you want smooth and fast," she said, "take the third." I thought about the house. The kitchen window, the maple tree, the cedar bench on the porch. Then I thought about Vanessa pacing and Brian searching for apartments at midnight. "All right," I said. "Let's accept it." 40 minutes later, it was done. "Congratulations, your house is officially under contract." The words landed quietly. Final. Outside, the air smelled faintly of chestnuts. I stood there for a moment, letting it sink in. After 30 years, it was no longer mine, and strangely, I felt lighter. When I got home, both of them were waiting. "Well?" Vanessa demanded. Brian looked up. "Did you decide?" "Yes," I set my purse down. The house is under contract. Silence. Already? Asked Brian. Yes. Vanessa flushed red. You didn't even tell us. I mentioned it. That's not the same thing. Brian stood slowly. So that's it? Yes. When do we leave? 30 days. Vanessa let out a hollow laugh. You're going to regret this. Why? Because when everything falls apart, don't expect us to come running. I looked at her calmly. I wasn't expecting you to. That was the moment everything changed. The house didn't disappear all at once. It faded. One drawer at a time, one empty shelf, one quiet room. By week 2, the anger had burned out. Vanessa stayed out more. Brian stayed in. One afternoon, I came home with empanadas from a small bakery. Brian was surrounded by paperwork. You find something? Maybe. A small 2-bedroom above a hardware store. Rent's manageable if we split it. Good. Vanessa hates it. Not surprising. He gave a tired smile. I didn't realize how much you handle in this house. Bills, insurance, taxes, everything, he added. Yes. I never noticed. That happens. By week 3, the house felt hollow. The desk went first, then more furniture. The inspector came. Tree's in great shape, he said. It's been here a long time. Final week. Boxes everywhere, closets echoing. Even the fridge looked lonely. Vanessa signed the lease, Brian said. That's good. And you? I'm leaving tonight. He blinked. Tonight? Yes. You're not staying for closing. The lawyer will handle it. He looked around slowly. You packed everything important. Yes. Near the river? Yes. He smiled faintly. You always liked the water. I left just after sunset. No moving truck, just my car, 2 suitcases, a small box. My husband's watch, old photos, my mother's quilt, a tin of Darjeeling tea. I stood on the porch one last time, the kitchen lights still on. 30 years of life behind that window. I didn't feel sad. I felt finished. I locked the door, left the keys, got in the car, and drove away. The new place was simple, quiet, a balcony overlooking the river. I opened the door, fresh paint, clean air, no tension, no noise, just peace. I stepped onto the balcony. Cool air drifted in. A boat hummed softly in the distance, and for the first time in years, no one needed anything from me. I leaned on the railing and smiled, because the truth was simple. I hadn't lost a house. I had finally gotten my life back.